Welcome to Alive with Bhavna. This is Bhavna speaking, and thank you for listening to today's show where I will be discussing your relationship with your mind. Is your mind your friend or your foe? For those new to the show, I'm Bhavna Nagar. I've worked as a clinical psychologist for the past 20 years, both in New Zealand and in South Africa, where I come from. I came to New Zealand 14 years ago. My business is called Alive Psychology. Although my mindfulness practice started in South Africa, it grew and matured into the self-love practice here in New Zealand. This resulted in me writing a book called Self-Love, The First Step, that gives you practical tools from both psychology and mindfulness practice. So you get the best of both worlds. Let's start with a few quotes about the mind for today's discussion. Reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else. George Orwell. You have the power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. The mind is its own place and in itself can create heaven of hell or hell of heaven. John Milton. You cannot have a positive life and a negative mind. Joyce Meyer. You either control your mind or it controls you. Napoleon Hill. I'm not sure who said this originally. There's many people attributed to this one. But your mind can be your greatest friend or your worst enemy. You choose. All of these quotes tell us in various ways that the mind is very powerful and useful. Yet, for most of us, it is one of the parts of our beings that we feel powerless over, or that we've never spent any time learning how to cultivate or use. Think of this as your most powerful weapon in your life, but it's sitting in the garage, taking up space because you don't know what to do with it or how to use it properly. You lug it around every time you move, but you've never learned how to use it. In school, and from a young age, we learn how to manage our intellect and our bodies. We learn how to think, problem solve, deductive reasoning, and all other forms of intellect pursuit. Over time, with practice, we get good at thinking and reasoning. We use our bodies to move, to write, to walk, to run, to jump. We might even do sports or gymnastic that requires us to learn how to use our bodies in a certain way. We practice and we get good at that too. We might even work our artistic abilities or talents and learn to play a musical instrument or sing. But conventional teaching does not teach us how to harness and use our most powerful tool, our minds. That we just leave for it to fend for himself. And as many authors have described the mind, it's like a field that's left untended, left to its own devices. So it grows weeds or plants that are completely unuseful and serve no purpose in our lives. Plants that are hard to remove completely because they're so deeply ingrained and set into the ground. In the Buddhist tradition, they describe the mind as a wild animal. A wild animal living in the wild is useful and functional. But if we want the wild animal to live in our domestic world, we first need to tame it before it can be useful and serve us. Like the quote from Napoleon Hill stated, you either control your mind or it controls you. What does that mean? It means that without control or direction, our minds become our worst enemies. It turns our lives into a hell even when the outside reality is not so bad. By its very nature, our minds are a problem-solving machine. Fortunately, in most of our daily lives, we're not having problems all the time. So in essence, the mind has nothing to do. So it makes up a problem. I remember telling a colleague once that at this moment, I have no problems. And what I meant by that is in this very moment, in this second, I am okay. Nothing serious is going on in my life in this very second, in this moment. I'm okay, I'm breathing okay, heart's beating fine, there's no crisis. She looked at me completely horrified and said that if she didn't have a problem, she would make one up. And that is what living unconsciously is about. Living in the problematic state of mind, where we need a problem all the time. Where you only feel alive if you're fighting a fire, struggling, distressed, anxious, or worried. And the mind's brilliant at giving you this. It can pick anything from your past and replay that to create anxiety or distress in the present. Or it can project us into the future, where we fear that we're going to fail, get hurt, abused, humiliated, or whatever else. Or the mind can project us into a fictional world, kind of like that movie you watched last night. How would you cope if you were in that situation? What would you do in that situation to survive? To keep us in the distress, the mind doesn't only keep the distressing thoughts to itself. It encourages us to talk about it and share it with others. In this way, I spread my anxiety, fear, distress, all in the guise of reaching out for support. Every time that I get together with my friends, we talk about our problems, how we're struggling with life, how hard things are. After leaving my friends, I feel normal and weighed down. My distress either feels the same or worse than before I met them. Society supports this mode of being because it's good for the economy and the medical world. The more distressed we are, the more we consume products or medication to reduce our symptoms. Can't sleep? Here's a pill. Social media is also great at keeping my distress going because it feeds my mind's obsession by showing me things that it knows I like to watch, which increases my sense of dis-ease, my fear. Or social media shows me things that my friends are doing, pleasurable stuff, and it makes me feel like at this moment I'm the only one struggling because they all are happy. So there must be something wrong with me. Now my mind has a real juicy problem to solve. What's wrong with me? How do I fix me? And because the what's wrong with me is so elusive, I can never really fix me or fix me properly. So I spend my whole life trying to fix me because my mind tells me that only when I fix me, then and only then will I be okay. As a business person, people are always asking me if I'm busy, as if being busy is a sign of productivity, and not being busy is a sign of failure or weakness. The busier we are, the better. We strive to be busy, to do a lot. Whether we're doing that on our holidays, on our weekends, we want to keep busy. Sleep? Who has time for that? Rest? Who has time for that? Because stopping is scary. Because when we stop, our emotions catch up with us. Or when I stop, I actually realize that my mind goes crazy. So I need to keep myself distracted all the time. I need to have something to focus on. I need to be achieving, doing, getting better at something, because this all keeps me going. But all of this means that my mind is in control of me. My mind is running the show, and I am its hapless victim. It means that my superpower is being used for my destruction rather than my well-being. Here's a test to see if your mind is working for or against you. For the rest of today, pay attention to your mind and what it says. What does your mind tell you about yourself? How do you talk to yourself? Tone of voice and words that you use. What do you say about other people? And when you do this exercise, notice if you talk to yourself in a way that you talk to other people. Or do you talk to yourself in a way that you'll never talk to other people? Do you talk to yourself in a manner that you like other people talking to you? Or in a manner in which you object other people talking to you? If it's not okay for you to talk to yourself that way, or for other people to talk to you that way, then why is it okay for you to talk to you that way in your mind? If this is the case, clearly then your mind is not your friend. While listening to your mind, notice if you're fighting with yourself. For example, a part of you wants to go to the gym, and the other part of you is saying, nah, not today, can't be bothered. Or whatever it is you fight over with yourself. Maybe it's just the idea of getting up in the morning, getting out of bed, doing the dishes, leaving the house, eating a healthy meal. Whatever your fight is, just notice how much of your day is spent fighting against yourself. Again, if you're fighting against yourself, your mind's not your friend. It's your enemy. You're at war with yourself. When you listen to your mind, does it leave you feeling better about yourself? Or do you feel worse? If worse, clearly it's not your friend. Do the things that your mind focuses on make you feel better or make you feel worse about yourself? Again, if it's worse, your mind is not serving you. Here's another test. This time to see who's the boss, you or your mind. Just for a minute, focus on your breath and ask your mind to stop. Can you do it? Or does the mind distract you? This is the hardest part of any mindfulness practice. Teaching the mind to be focused on what I want it to focus on, rather than what it wants to focus on. And like all other pursuits in life, initially it's really difficult to do, especially since the mind has years of practice of doing whatever it wants to, running wild, and now you're trying to tame it. It's like wanting to run a marathon, but finding it hard to walk around the block. But if I keep walking around the block, it gets easier. And then I can slowly add a jog and extend my distance. And eventually, with a lot of practice, I will be able to run a marathon, as long as I put in the necessary effort. Likewise with the mind. It's starting small and not expecting massive changes in my first go. I usually tell clients that if they're doing a 10-minute sitting practice, they'll only get 60 seconds of mindfulness. Most of the time, they'll be focused on bringing their minds back to the breath. It will stay there for a second or two before it buggers off again. And then it takes a while for us to realize that our mind has wandered, and then bringing it back for another second. And at the end of the 10 minutes, we might have been present for 60 whole seconds. This might sound futile. 1 second is nothing. In the mindfulness tradition, they often talk about filling a bucket, slowly, 1 drop at a time. Over time, you get a bucket full of water. Watch a toddler learning how to stand and then walk. Same thing. They stand for 1 second and then fall. And then tries again and again until they can stand for longer. And then they take that first tentative step and fall. And try again until they can walk. Same with mindfulness. Start slowly and build up. Start by noticing the small things in your life. Allowing yourself to be present for just that one tiny experience. The first feeling of the sun on you. Your first sip of coffee. The feeling of coming home to your family. The kiss from your partner or your child. The hug. Just allowing yourself to feel this one tiny moment without the mind interrupting this experience. Each time we have a tiny moment of presence, we're adding 1 drop of water to our bucket. Or maybe you want to start with a cup because a bucket seems too big. A cup feels more manageable. So start filling your cup 1 drop at a time. If you have the time and desire to get good at controlling your mind, then you might want to incorporate a sitting practice into your daily life. This way you'll fill more drops into your cup in a shorter period of time. So why would you want to do all this effort to get control of the mind? Why do you want to put in all this work? What do you get from making your mind your friend? From being in control of your mind rather than being its servant? I can only speak for myself. But since doing these practices, my mind has definitely become my best friend. Used to be my worst enemy. Now it's my best friend, my most loyal companion. I'm happier, more peaceful than I was when I lived in distress. I deal with problems as they come up, rather than living in constant anxiety about what could go wrong, what could happen. My life feels a lot easier. Yes, there's still dramas and problems in my life. Nothing on the outside world has changed, but how I cope with the outside world has changed. How much energy I give my problems has changed. At the end of the year, I used to reflect on the year that has just gone. The 1 year I was reflecting on my year with a friend who is controlled by her mind. I told her, it's been another good year for me. And I rattled off the whole lot of good reasons why I thought it was a good year. She challenged my perception that it was a good year by reminding me of the few not so good things that happened that year. I smiled and said, even with all that still felt like a good year. Because I focus on what I want. Peace, happiness, and well-being. I fuel those emotions. I fuel those experiences. I sleep better and wake up feeling more alive. In many ways, I feel like a little kid. I'm happy, engaging with my daily life, feeling my emotions as they happen, and then let it go. I play a lot more. I laugh easily. I find pleasure in small things. I laugh at my mistakes and treat myself with kindness and compassion. I connect more deeply and openly with people. I trust life and other people. I'm constantly growing and changing. So I'm not there yet. Many people think I'm there. I don't know where there is or why I would want to be there. All I know is that I want to be here and connect with what's happening now. Yes, there are days and weeks where I feel overwhelmed and distressed, as I've spoken about in the past episodes. But with this practice, I'm able to reflect and realize when I'm feeling distressed. And sometimes I need to do a bit of extra work to get back to the calm. But knowing that I have the tools to control my mind and using it has been my greatest learning and will continue to be my greatest learning until my last breath. I'm always learning ways of using my superpower, of improving on it, of playing with it, of testing it out. So, is it worth to do all the hard work? Let me ask you this. Looking at that infant learning how to walk, would you say that it was worth the effort for you as an infant to learn how to walk, to put in all that effort? Same answer goes for learning how to control the mind. Yes, definitely. And in this way, as you control the mind, you're never alone. Because you have your best friend, your most loyal companion, right beside you, laughing, singing, crying, supporting, holding you. And with that, you have nothing to fear. You have someone in your camp, always. Thank you for listening to me, and hope that you found today's talk helpful. If you want to contact me, all my details are available on my website, which is alivepsych.co.nz. You can also find me on Facebook under Alive Psychology. Thank you and have a good day.